Hello again everyone, welcome back to another lecture video. Today we've got a very interesting presentation. We're going to be talking about rhetorical fallacies, which is one of the more interesting, more enjoyable, just kind of fun things we talk about this semester. So there's a whole lot of rhetorical fallacies out there, so covering them all in one video is just not possible. But what I'm going to do is cover some of the more common ones, and I've got some I think pretty interesting examples from pop culture, movies, TV shows, commercials, stuff like that. So understanding rhetorical fallacies is important for a variety of reasons, mostly because fallacies are a useful tool for like marketing, and just we're constantly bombarded by ads, sources to read, and it's important to understand how they can function and how they can kind of deviate from what would be an ethical argument. So today we're going to cover a few rhetorical fallacies, and this is useful just to keep in mind as you're looking at job postings or communicating with other people. Think about how are fallacies being used? Are they being used as someone trying to deceive me? So yeah, we'll cover that today. So a tiny little scheduling update. Genre research presentations were initially listed as being due on Monday, but since we're doing class asynchronously, giving you an extra couple days I think makes sense. So those have been pushed back to Wednesday. So what you're going to want to do is upload your PowerPoint, Word documents, whatever you've put together to the ReggieNet forum. So these genre research presentations, it's just an opportunity for you to talk about what you found researching your companies. And this is going to be useful as you're putting together your corporate culture analyses, knowing where to find sources, what you might talk about. So hopefully this helps as you put together that portion of the assignment. And again, check out the samples I have put up on ReggieNet. I wrote one out. I did a little PowerPoint. So these are very casual, super informal. They shouldn't take you too long to put together. Going through researching and analyzing the material is something that's probably going to take the most time. So check out the resources I've provided you. And if you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out and ask. Another slight change is initially in the syllabus I had an extra day set aside to corporate culture analyses, but since that was already covered, what we're going to be doing is talking about public speaking on Monday. So public speaking is important, especially in the context of a business writing course, because no matter what you do, you're going to be communicating with people. You're going to be trying to transfer ideas so other people can understand what it is you're talking about. So knowing some skills available to effectively speak in public is something worthwhile, and kind of fits into the context of this unit, since you're looking at companies, you're finding jobs you want to apply for, and the end game of that is succeeding in an interview. So we'll talk about public speaking and how you can use that to create effective interview prep on Monday. So that's what we got going on for today and coming up. So the first thing we need to understand is, what are fallacies? What are fallacies of argument? How do they manifest? What do they look like? So in essence, fallacies are essentially lies, and these are powerful tools for any rhetorician, any public speaker, anyone doing any kinds of communication. Fallacies can be very useful tools if you're trying to supplement an argument that's super weak, that doesn't have a lot of merit to it on its own behalf, as fallacies tend to distract from the actual arguments being made. So fallacies will instead focus on unrelated issues, perhaps take malicious personal attacks at a person, as opposed to discussing the key issue, what is actually being communicated. Fallacies can be applied to each of the primary rhetorical appeals we've discussed already this semester. So ethos, logos, pathos all have various fallacies associated with them, and we'll cover some of them coming up. Though there are many types of fallacies, we can't discuss them all in this video here today, so I'm going to only briefly mention a few of the more common ones, some of the more interesting ones, some of the more malicious ones. You may be familiar with other types of fallacies because there are so many, and you encounter these daily, though it might be on a subconscious level. So we don't have time to cover all of them here today. So I'm going to go through a few of them. And what I want you to do is pay attention through these slides, through these examples, and as you're watching these, kind of pay attention and kind of think to yourself, have you seen this fallacy before? Have you seen it represented to you? Is there perhaps a particular advertisement you've seen in your life, or something you've heard from someone in a position of power, politician, educator, something like that? So with these fallacies, these are unfortunately relatively easy to make connections with in our daily lives. So we'll go over a few of them and discuss what they look like. The first rhetorical fallacy we are going to discuss is the fallacy of scare tactics. And to give you a little bit of perspective on what this fallacy is, I have a definition of it from the common textbook Everyone's an Author. So scare tactics see redders peddle their ideas by scaring people and exaggerating possible dangers well beyond their statistical likelihood. So with this appeal, what a redder, what a public speaker is essentially doing is misrepresenting the potential severity or consequences of an action, of something taking place. So an example I have for you, let's say you're in this English class, but you're not studying hard. So an example of a scare tactic might be, if you do not study hard in English 145, you're going to fail this course. You're going to drop out of school and work as the second shift manager at Denny's while you try to sell abstract art out of the trunk of your used Toyota Avalon. So that is a scary thought, right? Working at Denny's, selling art out of the back of a trunk might not be everyone's idea of where they want their life to go. If that is where you want your life to go, more power to you. I wish you the best of luck. But the example here, if you don't study in English 145, the odds of you actually getting a job at Denny's and selling art out of a Toyota Avalon are not very likely. So that's the exaggeration of possible dangers well beyond their statistical likelihood represented here. So I have a couple examples I'm going to show you. The first one is a advertisement, a trailer for the movie Reefer Madness. So marijuana has recently been legalized in Illinois, been legalized in a bunch of other states. And as you're sitting through, as you're watching this ad, pay attention to how marijuana usage is represented, and keep in mind the stats related to this relevant drug. And as you're watching this video, think, is this what you're seeing in Illinois now that cannabis has become legal? So check out this ad and see what you think about the scare tactic.
These high school boys and girls are having a hop at the local soda fountain. Innocently they dance. Innocent of a new and deadly menace lurking behind closed doors. Marijuana, the burning weed with its roots in hell. In this film, you will see the ease with which this vicious plant can be grown in your neighbor's yard, rolled into harmless-looking cigarettes, hidden in an innocent shoe or watch case.
If you want a good smoke, try one of these.
You will meet Bill, who once took pride in his strong will as he takes the first step toward enslavement.
Of course, if you're afraid.
Smoking the soul-destroying reefer, they find a moment's pleasure, but at a terrible price. Debauchery, violence, murder, suicide, and the ultimate end of the marijuana addict. Hopeless insanity. See this important film now, before it is too late.
Pretty terrifying, am I right? So after watching that trailer, I'm just reflecting on my own life, and I'm so happy that I've been able to survive the multiple Black Sabbath concerts I've attended in my life. Had I known marijuana was that dangerous, had I known I would have been jumping out of a window just from being close to that drug, I would have avoided it at all costs. So that's an example of a scare tactic, and I'm sure you have a bunch more examples as well. But anytime you see something and it seems a bit fishy, like, is that really gonna be the case? Is that really something that can possibly happen? That is an example of a scare tactic in action. So moving on from scare tactics, we have an appeal that specifically exploits pathos. So as you remember, pathos is a rhetorical appeal focused on emotion. And with an overly sentimental appeal, This fallacy is attacking pathos or exploiting it as it wrenches up emotional appeals in an attempt to manipulate an audience. So a prime example of this, I'm sure you've all seen the sad animal commercials that play on television, Sarah McLachlan, ASPCA, or whatever it is. I will play that video in this lecture, so if you just want to skip over that, I completely understand given the concept matter. But with an overly sentimental appeal, you really run the risk of betraying your audience because it's easy to see through these kinds of arguments, these kinds of fallacies. So again, to go with the McLachlan video, they're showing pictures of animals looking very sad, looking very injured, and deep down inside, I think most of us really enjoy animals. So that ad is exploiting that. It's exploiting the emotional connection we feel if we've had pets in the past, and it's using that to exploit us, to try to get us to donate, to try to make us give money to the program. So with that rhetorical fallacy, do pay attention to it and understand how using this, how exploiting your audience's emotions can have a negative impact on your credibility as an author. Sorry about that. It's just such a perfect example to kind of illustrate the point of an overly sentimental appeal. I do have one more example, and this was a Super Bowl ad a few years ago, and I'll let it play out for you right now.
Hey, wait! Just wait! Wait! I'll never learn to ride a bike. Or get cooties. I'll never learn to fly. Or travel the world with my best friend. And I won't ever get married. I couldn't grow up because I died from an accident.
At Nationwide, we believe in protecting what matters most. Your kids. Together, we can make safe happen.
So, in kind of a what the fuck is going on moment here, we see this ad using an overly sentimental appeal, talking about a child dying to sell insurance, a bit extreme, a bit over the top. And I remember after this ad played in the Super Bowl, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, seeing a lot of backlash online the next day, because again, people were able to see through the fallacy. They were able to see through how this commercial was exploiting emotion to attempt to sell a product. And when you do that, you can see the damage it does to your ethos, the damage it does to your credibility. So do try to avoid these at all costs. Moving away to a new rhetorical fallacy, we're going to talk about ad hominem attacks. So an ad hominem attack is an attack against a person as opposed to their actual arguments. What are they saying doesn't matter. With an ad hominem argument, all you're focused on is attacking that person, attacking their character, attacking their ethos in an attempt to build up your own. This is something that's unfortunately very common in a variety of political attack ads, and these are used to take focus off the actual issues at hand. You see a lot of politicians or a lot of people arguing in general. They know that their case is not particularly strong, and the only way they can win an argument, the only way they can look powerful, is by discrediting the person that's standing against them. Ultimately, this fallacy doesn't really do anything for you. It doesn't do anything to strengthen your own argument, and you can come off looking pretty petty if you're just constantly attacking people. So I have another video that goes into more detail on ad hominems and shows a couple examples for you, so check that out right now.
Welcome to Argument Clinic, a guide to spotting bad arguments on the internet. In this episode, we're going to be talking about ad hominem, a classic logical fallacy. What's that? You don't think ad hominem attacks are that bad? Well, you would think that because you're a moron. I'm kidding, of course. You're not a moron. I'm just demonstrating an ad hominem attack, which means trying to refute an argument by attacking the character of the person making it, rather than the logic or premise of the argument itself. Boy, okay, now, where can we find examples of an ad hominem attack?
It's Rubio!
Sure, there must be one around here somewhere.
He said he's got pathological disease. He actually said pathological temper, and then he defined it as disease.
Come on. One of you must have seen somebody respond to a critique by reflexively attacking the character of the person raising it, rather than the substance of the argument.
He has a news conference all the time when he's eating. I have never seen a human being eat in such a disgusting fashion.
Okay, to be fair, it is not just President Trump who resorts to ad hominem attacks. Anytime someone dismisses a protester by saying they're paid by George Soros, or argues that anyone who supports Trump's immigration policy is racist, they're using an ad hominem attack. Take a look at any comment section and you'll find tons of ad hominem attacks. Ad hominem attacks are not always wrong. Sometimes the character of the person making an argument is in fact directly related to that argument. If, for instance, they're making an argument based on their own authority and they don't have any. If my buddy Daniel tells me that he learned in med school that it's totally healthy to eat 7 pounds of beef stroganoff a day, it would be perfectly valid for me to point out that he never actually went to medical school and is in fact an electrician. But for the most part, people make ad hominem attacks to avoid the argument altogether. Let's take a look at a few different flavors, shall we? So you've got ad hominem tu quoque. This is when you accuse someone of not practicing what they preach. For instance, when a carnivore tells you that eating meat is bad for the planet, the fact that this purely hypothetical meat eater can't resist a savory bowl of beef stroganoff does not invalidate the argument. And then there's ad hominem circumstantial, in which you try to invalidate the argument by claiming it is within the arguer's self-interest. For instance, if I present data that proves that tax cuts are good for the economy, it would be a fallacy to dismiss it just because I'd benefit from that tax cut. And then there's poisoning the well, in which someone is primed to distrust someone else's argument in advance. For instance, the way Donald Trump called a bunch of press outlets enemies of the American people the day before news broke about some members of his administration's communications with Russia. You get the idea. Ad hominem attacks are easy, and they can be kind of fun, but they are not sound. They are dodges, a way to avoid grappling with the substance of an argument itself. You don't agree? Feel free to hop on the next train to Losertown, because that's obviously where you belong.
Another powerful fallacy that we have is an either-or choice. And with an either-or fallacy, what this does is it breaks down a super complex issue into two binary choices, often painting one as being super malicious, while the other side being noble or the only right thing to do. Now, as we know, life isn't that simple. There's not usually a one-to-one opposition for potential viewpoints. Life is complex. Life is full of a touch of gray. So with an either-or fallacy, pay attention to these because it is really useful if you're trying to demonize someone and make them feel like your argument is the only valid choice in the world. This is something you see a lot in modern politics, and I've got an example for you. Vote for this bill if you believe freedom is good. Now, it might be a bit simplistic, but that's essentially what this fallacy boils down to. Either you're with me or you're against me. And if you're against me, if you're against this bill, you hate America and are planning to stab the Statue of Liberty in the heart because you sympathize with Vladimir Putin and want to shoot a baby panda in the face with a shotgun. Again, a bit extreme. Why would you do that to a panda? They're adorable. So those are either or choices, and I have another example for you, this one coming from The Simpsons.
All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the PTA to diddly order, and let's see if we can't put an end to this strike fuss, huh? Mrs. Krabappel, why don't you begin?
Boo!
Oh, boo yourself. Our demands are simple. A small cost of living increase and some better equipment and supplies for your children.
Oh, that's Give it to him! Yeah, in a dream world, we have a very tight budget to do what she's asking. We'd have to raise taxes.
Way too high as they are. Taxes.
It's your children's future.
Children are important. Yes.
It'll cost you.
Taxes. Raise taxes.
Come on.
All right, that's a good point. Yes. Taxes.
That means money.
The finger thing means the taxes.
Well, I guess this is a case where we'll have to agree to disagree.
I don't agree to that.
Neither do I.
In that example from The Simpsons, we see the issue of school funding, the issue of paying teachers, driven down to two very simple sides the children of the future on one side versus raising taxes on the other side. Now, the issue of funding any government institution is super, super complex, so to boil it down to those just two simple sides is not really taking into consideration the nuance of the world we live in. So that's an example of an either-or choice. And I have one more for you. This one, it comes in the form of an advertisement for Nintendo 64, one of the greatest gaming consoles of all time. So this ad, it's kind of weird like a lot of stuff was in the mid to late 90s. And this ad uses either or choices with the slogan get N or get out. So essentially get a Nintendo 64 or be an outsider or be just completely left out of all the video game excitement and awesomeness provided by Nintendo. So check this ad out. I'm sure there's a ton of either or choices you've seen in modern advertisements, and this is just one example of that here.
Lives in the third dimension. You know who is in control. You know who has 4 times the action. You know who feels the freedom. You know who breaks the barriers. You know who stands out from the crowd. You know who everybody's after. You know the games of Nintendo 64. Get in or get out.
The next rhetorical fallacy we have is a straw man argument. And a straw man argument occurs when you counter an argument by responding to something completely different, something that's not really there, something that just vaguely resembles the argument at hand, but it's something you've created, something that you can easily take down, hence the name straw man, because something made of straw, easy to push over. So you do this to avoid actual issues, to deflect into something that seems related. This makes you seem more credible. This builds up your own ethos because it seems like you have the answers. But ultimately, you're not addressing the actual issue at hand. And when your audience sees that, they're going to begin to question your credibility and whether or not they should listen to you at all. So transition for this, I found a really good video from PBS, I believe, and this does a great job of describing it in a little more detail. So I'll let that play out before I have an example for you.
Hi there, internet commenter. You've been sent a link to this video because someone is concerned that you might not be arguing your case to your utmost ability. They're concerned you might have used a fallacy to make an important point, thus defeating your own claim. The fallacy they're concerned you might have used is the straw man fallacy. Contrary to what many people would have us believe, a straw man is not simply an argument that you dislike or find inconvenient. Rather, it is a version of an argument that is misrepresented, simplified, so that it is easier to knock over. Just as an actual man made of straw is a less solid version of a man made of flesh, a straw man argument is a less solid version of a fully fleshed out argument. A straw man replaces or represents whatever actual argument is being made. Straw manning can come in many different forms. It's not even always intentional. You might accidentally construct a straw man if you don't fully understand the depth of an argument. And that is fine. It happens to the best of us. However, to intentionally misread or misrepresent an argument to simplify the process of discrediting it, that's a little bit less forgivable. To take nuanced points out of context, to ignore crucial information, to even exaggerate claims to the point of absurdity, which is then easier to refute, these are all straw man tactics. For example, Mike and Straw Mike are having a conversation about how to responsibly depict awful stuff in media. I don't think it's too much to ask that when a media creator wants to show heinous or awful stuff, they do so in a context that shows that that stuff is heinous and awful. Oh, so now we're not allowed to show violent or terrible things unless we include some long-winded sermon about how bad things are bad? I think creators should be able to show or do whatever they want. The original argument states a preference for what Mike thinks constitutes the responsible use of media. The straw man argument recasts this as something much simpler and easier to agree with. Freedom is good, censorship is bad. But now, Mike and Straw Mike are no longer arguing about the same point, and so the conversation will quickly become unfocused and aggressive, which is never fun. If you're gonna win an argument, you want to win against what the other side actually thinks, don't you? A straw man argument keeps that from happening. I hope this description of the straw man fallacy has been helpful. Happy conversing.
That video provided a really useful way to view straw man arguments, and now I have an example for you that I found a few years ago. So the ad that's about to play discusses the Environmental Protection Agency, specifically some Obama-era policies, and a potential tax that went with that. So the straw man here is discussing climate change and talking about the potential cost of that. Well, the cost is not really the issue at hand. What is more pertinent, what is more present to this is the actual environmental impacts. So that's the straw man going on here. Check out this ad and see that in action.
President Obama's Environmental Protection Agency is considering new regulations on ozone that could trigger some new crazy laws, such as bans on lawn mowing during certain times of the day, new parking space taxes, and new fees based on how many miles you drive your car. Visit stoptheepa.com to tell your legislator that President Obama's EPA should stay out of our wallets.
For our final rhetorical fallacy of the day, we are going to be discussing slippery slope fallacies. And what this fallacy does is it works in the idea that one small error can lead to a disastrous series of consequences. So, example, your first writing prompt had a comma splice in the introduction. Therefore, you do not understand the fundamentals of the English language. You will not graduate college, and you'll be doomed to sell flowers on the interstate by the airport. Now, very similar to the scare tactic presented earlier, and that was essentially the similar thing, because a lot of these fallacies can work together to create even powerful, even more malicious fallacies of argument. So for this, I found a pretty good example. These are a series of commercials. You might remember these from when they aired, maybe about a decade ago, it seems like. So it's a long video at the end here, but it gives us some levity, gives us something enjoyable, something funny to look at with these direct TV ads. So watch as many of these as you like. There's some good stuff going on here, and when we finish these videos, there is a writing prompt at the end. So enjoy some of these. Hopefully you have some laughs to kind of get some levity from the rather complex and somewhat depressing fallacies we talked about here today.
When you pay too much for cable, you feel down. When you feel down, you stay in bed. When you stay in bed, they give your job to someone new. When they give your job to someone new, he has a lot to learn. When he has a lot to learn, mistakes are made. And when mistakes are made, you get body slammed by a lowland gorilla. Don't get body slammed by a lowland gorilla. Get rid of cable and upgrade to DirecTV. Call 1-800-DirecTV. When you have cable and can't record all your shows, you feel unhappy. When you feel unhappy, you go to happy hour. When you go to happy hour, you're up for anything. When you're up for anything, you head to a Turkish bathhouse. When you head to a Turkish bathhouse, you meet Charlie Sheen. And when you meet Charlie Sheen, you reenact scenes from Platoon with Charlie Sheen. Don't reenact scenes from Platoon with Charlie Sheen. Get rid of cable and upgrade to DirecTV. Call 1-800-DirecTV. When your cable goes out, you get stressed. When you get stressed, you need to get away. When you need to get away, you go for something exotic. When you go for something exotic, you get bitten by something exotic. When you get bitten by something exotic, things swell up. When things swell up, you can't go home. And when you can't go home, you become a local fisherman they call Big Fatty Face. Don't become a local fisherman they call Big Fatty Face. Get rid of cable and upgrade to DirecTV. Call 1-800-DirecTV. When you have cable and your picture freezes, you get irritable. When you get irritable, your work suffers. When your work suffers, the wrong man is convicted. When the wrong man is convicted, he has time to think. When he has time to think, he thinks about you a lot. And when he thinks about you a lot, your house explodes. Don't have your house explode. Get rid of cable and upgrade to DirecTV. Call 1-800-DirecTV. When you pay too much for cable, you throw things. When you throw things, people think you have anger issues. When people think you have anger issues, your schedule clears up. When your schedule clears up, you grow a scraggly beard. When you grow a scraggly beard, you start taking in stray animals. And when you start taking in stray animals, you can't stop taking in stray animals. Stop taking in stray animals. Get rid of cable and upgrade to DirecTV. Call 1-800-DirecTV. When your cable's on the fritz, you get frustrated. When you get frustrated, your daughter imitates. When your daughter imitates, she gets thrown out of school. When she gets thrown out of school, she meets undesirables. When she meets undesirables, she ties the knot with undesirables. And when she ties the knot with undesirables, you get a grandson with a dog collar. Don't have a grandson with a dog collar. Get rid of cable and upgrade to DirecTV. Call 1-800-DirecTV. When you have cable and can't find something good to watch, you get depressed. When you get depressed, you attend seminars. When you attend seminars, you feel like a winner. When you feel like a winner, you go to Vegas. When you go to Vegas, you lose everything. And when you lose everything, you sell your hair to a wig shop. Don't sell your hair to a wig shop. Get rid of cable and upgrade to DirecTV. Call 1-800-DirecTV. When you pay too much for cable, you feel powerless. When you feel powerless, you want to take the power back. When you want to take the power back, you take karate. When you take karate, you want to use your karate. When you want to use your karate, you become the fist of goodness. When you become the fist of goodness, you run along rooftops. And when you run along rooftops, you fall into a dinner party. Don't fall into a dinner party. Get rid of cable and upgrade to DirecTV. Call 1-800-DirecTV. When your cable company keeps you on hold, you get angry. When you get angry, you go blow off steam. When you go blow off steam, accidents happen. When accidents happen, you get an eye patch. When you get an eye patch, people think you're tough. When people think you're tough, people want to see how tough. And when people want to see how tough, you wake up in a roadside ditch. Don't wake up in a roadside ditch. Get rid of cable and upgrade to DirecTV. Call 1-800-DirecTV. When the cable company keeps you on hold, you feel trapped. When you feel trapped, you need to feel free. When you need to feel free, you try hang gliding. When you try hang gliding, you crash into things. When you crash into things, the grid goes down. When the grid goes down, crime goes up. And when crime goes up, your dad gets punched over a can of soup. Don't have your dad get punched over a can of soup. Get rid of cable and upgrade to DirecTV. Call 1-800-DirecTV. When you wait forever for the cable guy, you get bored. When you get bored, you start staring out windows. When you start staring out windows, you see things you shouldn't see. When you see things you shouldn't see, you need to vanish. When you need to vanish, you fake your own death. When you fake your own death, you dye your eyebrows. And when you dye your eyebrows, you attend your own funeral as a guy named Phil Shifley. Don't attend your own funeral as a guy named Phil Shifley. Get rid of cable and upgrade to DirecTV. Call 1-800-DirecTV. When you pay too much for cable, you feel dejected. When you feel dejected, you need some comfort. When you need some comfort, you make a surprise visit home. When you make a surprise visit home, you discover something new about your parents. When you discover something new about your parents, you speed off with tears in your eyes. And when you speed off with tears in your eyes, you drive into a pizzeria that makes great baked ziti. Don't drive into a pizzeria that makes great baked ziti. Get rid of cable and upgrade to DirecTV. Call 1-800-DirecTV. When your cable's on the fritz, you get tense. When you get tense, you can't sleep. When you can't sleep, you need to sleep. When you need to sleep, you get stranded. When you get stranded, you have to survive. When you have to survive, you eat wild berries. And when you eat wild berries, you chase imaginary butterflies into something highly illegal. Don't chase imaginary butterflies into something highly illegal. Get rid of cable and upgrade to DirecTV. Call 1-800-DirecTV.
It's a get rid of cable Twitter story that we made on Twitter together.
Get rid of cable. By you. When you wait forever for the cable guy, you get bored. When you get bored, you volunteer for lab experiments. When you volunteer for lab experiments, you get addicted to cheddar. When you get addicted to cheddar, you break into houses looking for cheddar. When you break into houses looking for cheddar, you fall down a flight of stairs and land in a time machine. When you fall down a flight of stairs and land in a time machine, you go back to the day you were conceived. When you go back to the day you were conceived, your future father chases you down the street with a shovel. And when your future father chases you down the street with a shovel, you get hit by an ice cream truck. But then fade away from existence anyways because your parents never ended up doing it. Don't get hit by an ice cream truck but then fade away from existence anyways because your parents never ended up doing it. Get rid of cable and upgrade to DirecTV. The end. Well, great job. All you guys did a great job.
That was a Get Rid of Cable Twitter story that we made on Twitter together. On Twitter together.
Hopefully you enjoyed that last series of videos. So that'll wrap it up for Rhetorical Fallacies. And it's important to be on the lookout for fallacies at every level, whether you're an audience member, whether you're putting something together yourself, whether you're putting something together for a client. So in this class, we're not just looking to become better writers, better students of business writing, but also just to become better analyzers of writing and communication in general. And with that, I'm going to leave you with a potential forum post prompt. And throughout these videos, throughout these examples I stated, you might have seen some of these or seen different examples of these in the past. So what I want you to do with your forum post for this week potentially is spend your 200 to 250 words thinking about the various rhetorical fallacies that you've seen in your life. So do you have a specific advertisement in mind or a specific product that you feel deliberately misled you? How did you see this fallacy in action? And also think about how the rhetorical fallacies, how is that going to impact the way you comprehend or analyze the work you're finding for your Unit 1 portfolio. So think about that, think about what the fallacies mean, what they mean to you, and how you can use fallacies or how you can avoid them going forward with your academic and professional career.